Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and it is Wednesday, the 3rd of August today, and today is the day for my Science of Being Seen presentation, which is coming up later. That's the plan. Anyway, at least if I manage to get everything sorted out in time. I've just had an alert, unfortunately, from Google, which looks like my Google account has been hacked, but I think I've put a block on that. So hopefully nothing untoward is about to happen there. But yes, it has been a slightly trying morning as I try to get all this sorted out. However, we do have a fairly packed show for you, show number 260. A police officer has been served with a gross misconduct notice after a fatal 999 crash, which killed a 74-year-old bike passenger. The fire that destroyed grassland in Milton Keynes was caused by a torched scooter. Two brothers who shot a bike thief have been found guilty of various offences. In Nigeria, action on Okadas, that is the commercial vehicles, that the scooters and motorcycles that are used for commercial purposes, action has been stepped up against riders there. A pensioner has been hospitalised after being headbutted by a biker. 1,700 people have signed a petition on MPs calling for police to tackle bike theft and antisocial riding in Humberside. And Agata, the World Supersport rider, has been given a one-race ban for a bizarre fake injury. And finally, we'll have a very quick look at CINECO'S E-RX1. It's an electrified version of the RX1 petrol bike. So before we do end the show, though, we will have our better biking tip, which is all about living with lifesavers. So, right, let me crack on with the show. Sorry if I seem a little bit disorganized this morning. Nigel was looked in. Good morning, Nigel. Good to see you again. Been a few days, hasn't it? Don't forget, if you've got any comments, any questions you want to ask, I will try to get back to you during the show. If I can't make it during the show, I will always answer you at the end in the comments. Right, now, first things first, of course, it is your very last chance to sign up for August's live online talk series event. It's the Science of Being Seen. It's the full presentation. That is the latest updated version of the presentation I delivered personally to Kent Fire and Rescue as part of Biker Down, and basically it's the full version of the I won't say dumbed down because that sounds a bit offensive, really, doesn't it? There's a simplified version that was delivered by many fire crews across the UK from 2012 to 2020, and of course you'll recall we also went on to win a Prince Michael of Kent International Road Safety Award at our Kent team for delivering Biker Down, including Science of Being Seen. So that's on tonight. It's on at 8 p.m. Tickets are £5. There is still openings to buy a ticket if you want to get hold of the show online. If you can't make it live, do remember that you can catch up with it excuse me, after the event for at least 72 hours. I make it available. So go online at the link, join the portal there, and you can sign up for all of Survival Skills events, including September's riding systems, what they are, why we need to apply them systematically talk. So August talk is tonight, Science of Being Seen, the full presentation in a month's time, first Wednesday in September. It will be riding systems, what they're all about, and why being systematic is the key point. And Christine and Nick have both looked in. Good morning to you both. Right, so on with the presentation. First thing, a police officer has been served with a gross misconduct notice after his patrol car was involved in a fatal crash with a motorcycle as he was responding to a 999 call. Now, as reported here previously, the collision occurred in Gateshead on Friday, July the 8th. The male rider sustained multiple injuries to leg, hip and pelvis, but sadly the passenger on the bike, Muriel Pinckney, who was 74, died in hospital on Sunday, July the 17th. Now, the Independent Office for Police Conduct is investigating the circumstances, and according to reports, the notice informs the officer that conduct or actions may have breached the standards of professional behaviour, and that the evidence so far collected indicates they may also have committed a criminal offence in relation to their manner of driving. The IOPC Regional Director Thea Walton said, following thorough and careful analysis of the available evidence, we have informed an officer that their conduct is now under investigation. Upon conclusion of our inquiries, we will determine whether any disciplinary proceedings or a referral to the Crown Prosecution Service may be required, or indeed whether any learning has been identified. And she went on to say that their thoughts remain with Mrs. Pinkney's family and all those affected, and they said, well, they will remain in contact with the family to keep them updated on how the inquiries are progressing. Now, the notice does not necessarily mean conduct proceedings or criminal charges will follow, but the status of the officer will remain under review throughout the forthcoming investigation. Up in Milton Keynes area, not too far from me, a fire raged through an area of arable land and into an adjacent wilded area in Wolverton, near Milton Keynes, and that was last week, and it's been found that it was caused by an abandoned scooter that had been deliberately set alight. The fire spread very quickly, of course, with the dry conditions that we have at the moment, and 5 fire engines and 20 firefighters were tasked with tackling this blaze, which broke out at around 6:45 p.m. on Thursday evening last week. The smoke was visible for miles, apparently. The area is owned by the Parks Trust, so witnesses are being asked to come forward if they saw anything suspicious or anybody with the bike in the general area. They're being asked to contact the local police. Now, it's a bit of a criminal event heavy day today, because 2 brothers who were charged with offences including attempted murder after a suspected thief was allegedly attempting to steal motorcycles in Greenhithe in Kent back in March 2020 have been convicted at Maidstone Crown Court. As previously reported here, Christopher Norse and his brother Colin were forensically linked to bullet casings recovered from the scene, and the handgun used in the shooting was later found hidden under a car parked a few streets away from Christopher's home. And now Christopher Norse, 43, described as a gun enthusiast, has been found guilty of by a majority 11-1 verdict of attempted murder. His brother Colin was acquitted of attempted murder, but convicted of illegally possessing a firearm. Both of them had denied attempted murder and possessing weapons with intent. They were remanded in custody. They'll be sentenced in October after a judge at Maidstone Crown Court asked for a probation report. Prosecutor Martin Yale told the court that gunshots rang out in the residential area as Ross Eagleston was hit in the arm by 2 of the bullets and sustained serious injury. He said the target was a group of men who were in the process of trying to steal some motorcycles. He continued, whatever Mr. Eagleston and the group were doing, that cannot possibly justify shooting at them, let alone in an effort to kill them. Eagleston is currently serving a jail sentence, and he has denied trying to steal the bikes and said he was planning to buy cannabis nearby. The jury heard that after the shooting, the thieves returned and stole the bikes anyway. So, right, okay, don't forget, you can always head over to my coffee page. Elevenses goes out at, I'll start again, I've got the wrong banner up here. I'm a bit baffled and confused today. So, right, if you miss the live show, you can always head over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Survival Skills UK. Don't forget that all important UK on the end, or you won't get my channel. The show goes out live Wednesdays and Sundays on Facebook, but I know it can be a bit difficult to catch up if you missed it live, because it will disappear off of your timeline very, very quickly indeed. So make a note of the YouTube address, and if you do miss a show and you want to catch up, it's probably easier to head over there and grab the show. Right, so where were we? Next story will take us to Nigeria, in fact. You probably know there is a ban on the popular motorcycles that are known as Okada in the country. Now, the problem with the Okada is it's fairly long running. Let me see if I can get a picture up on screen for you. This is what's been going on. Just a moment while I sort myself out again. I didn't quite get ready today due to other events. There we go. We have a pile of motorcycles that are being scrapped and trashed, basically being put in a crusher. Now, let me try to explain if you haven't followed this story before. These Okada, they are motorcycles used on a commercial basis in Nigeria, and there is a ban on their use in certain parts of the country, particularly around the capital city of Abuja. And they have been banned for many years, but there has recently been a big clampdown on their illegal use in the zones where they are banned from. So another 1,700 motorcycles have been seized and destroyed, and this is just a small proportion of the total number. The Okada are very popular for carrying people around as passengers. They also carry goods and delivery. It's on an informal basis. There are licensed companies which can carry goods, but the Okada are used by unlicensed riders. Now, journalists were told at the start of this second phase of the exercise, which started last Wednesday apparently, that destroying these motorcycles will act as a deterrent to the riders who continue to flout the rules. And the reason is that Okada are implicated in criminal activities, including bag snatching, bank robberies, and attacks on people in residential areas. Now, nationwide, the clampdown is underway on unregistered motorcycles. So this is a different initiative, but the same country. Now, riders who have failed to register their bikes with the National Vehicle Identification Scheme, so basically it's very, very similar to our registration plate, they will have their bikes impounded until they complete full registration of the motorcycle, after which it would be released back to the owner. Now, this directive has been issued by what's known as the Federal Road Safety Corps, and it calls on all 37 sector commanders across the nation to get on with enforcing this in full, so that any motorcycle seen without appropriate registration would be seized. And the drive for this appears to be a number of reported terrorist attacks in various locations across Nigeria, which have possibly been linked to the escape of a number of members of the Boko Haram terrorist group. So fairly terrifying times out there, I would imagine. Okay, so I didn't start to talk about coffee. I will do it again. If you do enjoy the show, if you do want to support my research for my presentations, for the time I put into putting this show together, for any of my work basically online, you can pop over to my coffee page. I know I'm probably talking to converted here because most of you who turn up regularly are supporters, but do to other people. They can support me this way, and do spread the word that they can get hundreds of better biking articles over on my coffee page. Right, so okay, back to the UK, and a pensioner has been taken to hospital with a head injury after he was allegedly headbutted by a biker in what police have described as an unprovoked attack. A 35-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the incident, and he's been released under investigation whilst inquiries continue. Now, the incident happened on the early afternoon of Friday, July the 29th, so just a few days ago, in Stockton. Now, according to Cleveland police, the 77-year-old man was waiting to cross the road when two motorcycles approached. They both stopped, and one rider, said to be on a BMW, headbutted the pensioner before proceeding to ride across the road and kick a black VW Golf, and apparently causing thousands of pounds worth of damage to this vehicle. Now, press reports have been talking of an S100 BMW, but presumably that's an S1000 of some variety, particularly as witnesses say that the bike is predominantly white and had red and blue flashes, and the rider was wearing a distinctive multicolored helmet with a peak on the front. The other motorcycle was white and red. Now, although one person is obviously under investigation, police are seeking anyone who saw or filmed the incident on CCTV or dashcam footage. Now, the latest area to call on the police to do more to prevent motorcycle theft and antisocial behaviour is Humberside, where people living in Scunthorpe, Hull and Grimsby have all voiced concerns that these issues are affecting their local communities. Now, Operation Yellowfin is a Humberside police initiative, and its idea is it cracks down on motorcycle theft and the reckless riding of what are often stolen bikes. But the operation has had some success. Locals believe more still needs to be done. And many have said that it needs to be running full-time and be better staffed. Others believe harsher punishments are necessary as a deterrent. Well, if you listen to last week's show, you'll know why I'm never convinced that deterrents are the right solution. But anyway, almost 1,800 people have signed this petition calling on for these measures to be implemented, including one rider who has had 3 bikes stolen. Now, Xander James, he set up the petition. He said, the Operation Yellowfin team operates in the Humberside area and we're asking for them to be made full-time. The last time they were a full-time team, bike theft dropped dramatically in the area. We need that team reinstated to tackle the bike thieves and make Humberside, specifically Hull and East Yorkshire, safe for riders again. And he went on to highlight the cost to riders. He said, many of us can't afford to keep replacing our property that is targeted by these thieves. Along with this, we can't even safely park our vehicles outside our home, our workplace, or practically any public space without a never increasing risk of theft. And the move has found support from MPs too. The Conservative MP for Scunthorpe, Holly Mumby-Croft, along with fellow MP Andrew Percy, has demanded answers from Humberside Police, and she said that she wants to see a full breakdown on what is being done to address the issues and to see what more can be done. Operation Yellowfin was introduced a couple of years ago by Humberside Police to tackle motorbike-related crime, whether that relates to offenders stealing the bikes or riding them in an unsafe way. Right, okay, so on to something a little bit different. At least it's not criminal or crime related, although an offence was committed. And this is a very, very weird story from World Supersport Championships, the FIM events. The leader of the Supersport Championship, Dominic Agata, was actually given a 1-race ban for what was described as unsporting behaviour. Now, I haven't actually seen the event, so I can't tell you from first hand. I've only watched or read the news reports on this, but during race 1 on the Saturday last weekend in the Czech Republic, he crashed in the middle of a 6-rider incident on the first corner. Now, the broadcast of the race apparently showed that 2 of the riders were able to pick the bikes up, climb back on and rejoin the race. 2 others walked away from the scene of the crash, but Agata was seen to be lying on the ground, and he was taken away on a stretcher. And as a result of his symptoms, which were apparently for a suspected concussion, he was declared unfit for race 2. Now, this is the odd thing. The rider returned to the hospital that evening and had another checkup, and then he was declared fit to ride. But this is where it gets really very, very odd indeed. The statement from World Superbikes says, following an FIM steward's investigation, the stewards ruled that Agata acted in an unsporting manner by simulating a medical condition in order to delay the recovery process and thus force a stoppage of the race by red flag. Now, quite why he would have done that is not entirely clear, unless perhaps he thought his teammate might. I don't know who was involved in the crash. I can't. I'm speculating. I would have to see the crash and see what went on. Maybe his teammate came down too and was delayed by the crash, and that would give him a better chance if the race was restarted. But anyway, it seems that he actually admitted to the FIM stewards and to the medical staff that he wasn't actually hurt at all. And anyway, for his unsporting behaviour, he was given an immediate one race ban, which basically meant that he didn't take part in race 2, even though he had been declared fit to ride in it. So the response from his Tenkate racing team was that he has apologised via a press release, and he said, first of all, I'm sorry about the whole situation that arose after the incident at turn 1 or in race 1. It was a very hectic situation. I did not act correctly and made mistakes. There was a lot of pressure, adrenaline, and emotions. I never wanted to put other people in danger. I want to apologise for that. And the police, the team have said that the whole situation is now handled, I think, as far as they're concerned. So it's a very strange situation. His rival Lorenzo Baldassari took 2 wins from the 2 races and has slashed Agata's lead in the championship to 14 points. So a very, very odd event indeed. Now, I've also talked about motorcycles repeatedly over the last 2 and a bit years, and I've been looking at the progression, the steady progression of electric motorcycles. We now know that there's legislation in the pipeline. We have a date for the end of life of the ICE engine. It won't disappear overnight, but it will certainly fade away, and it looks like electric motorcycles will take up a lot of the slack. Now, over the past couple of years, I have featured some very weird and wacky looking electric motorcycles, and some of them definitely push the boundaries of what we would consider as a practical motorcycle. Some, like the Ossa Cake, is a sort of modular bike, and you can bolt different bits onto it to allow it to perform different tasks, and I can see a use for those. But frankly, some of the designs that we've seen, they might appeal to early adopters. Some appear to blur the line between bicycle and motorcycle, and I'll be talking about that a bit more in another show, actually. But I've always thought that if you want mainstream acceptance of electric bikes as genuine replacements for petrol engine machines, then not only do they have to do the same job as the bike they're designed to replace, and obviously we have an issue with range here, but they also have to look like them too. So it's all very well looking like a clean slate design. It may appeal to a few people, but frankly, the history of innovative design tends to show that most people will trust what they know most of the time over what they don't know. So you may not be entirely surprised to discover that CINECO, who are an offshoot of the huge Zhongshan concern, the Chinese motorcycle builder, have brought out a new ERX1, and it's directly based on an RX1 200cc single motorcycle. So basically, out goes the petrol engine, in goes the electric motor and battery, and you have an electric bike which looks exactly like the petrol engine bike, albeit the engine, of course, looks slightly different, that it's due to sit alongside. Now, I'll show you a picture of this later. This is one of the little hitches I had. I didn't manage to get this picture up. The ERX1 is equivalent to the 200cc single, roughly speaking, with a power output of 17.5 kilowatts, 23.5 brake horsepower. Top speed, just over 80 miles per hour, which isn't anything to be sneezed at. It's quite brisk. Acceleration from 0 to 30 miles an hour, said to be 2.5 seconds. Final transmissions by belt, steel frame, usual LED lights, LCD display, and all the rest of it. Transmission is by belt, which I think is a good idea. On anything that gets rid of a chain is great, in my opinion. Range 124 miles, which takes 5 hours on a normal 3-pin socket, or 3 hours if you have a fast charging outlet. Motorcycle News picked up on this story too, and they speculated that should the bike go on sale here, and I will suspect it probably won't, it would be available for £5,500. Now, given that the equivalent bike, petrol engine bike, is likely to be somewhere around about £3,000, would be my guess, maybe a little bit more. You can see that electric motorcycles, whilst still more equivalent than their petrol engined equivalents, are getting more tolerable in terms of price. Right, now I've just got one comment there. Kevin has looked in. Hello, Kevin. Sorry, I didn't see you there. And Terry says, hard to see a resolution of motorcycle theft issue, given bikes being left in extremely vulnerable places as a matter of routine. Not sure if police flying squads can be seen as a permanent solution. No, I agree with you, Terry. I mean, this is something I've been banging on about on this show for quite a while. My thinking is that, in fact, the manufacturers have to do more. I did mention the bike which has geofencing last time out, and did speculate that this could actually be used to bring the bike to a standstill, so that if anybody has ridden it away from where it was parked, the bike will switch itself off and presumably coast nicely to a halt. So the theft will probably be abandoned at that point. And if anybody's taken the bike, then the anti-theft device should kick in and at least stop them from starting it easily. Yes, I know you can replace ECUs, and eventually somebody will hack it, but it stops most of the more casual theft. Interestingly, I was reading an article just the other day which suggests that even if you use the most basic of security, a cheap disc lock, for example, you actually reduce the chances of a bike being stolen by around 2/3. So one of the problems is that many of the bikes that are nicked are totally unsecured. So even modest security measures will have beneficial effects, and that's actually something that tangentially I'm going to talk about next week on Tuesday in my Tips on Tuesday series. Right, okay, so it's time for the Better Biking article. Now I just want to show you a video. This I did manage to get prepared first before we went online, so have a watch of this video. Now it's from India, and I just thought that first of all it really flags up a serious problem, also actually invites questions about Indian traffic rules. But just watch this and think about what you see. I'll just play that again so you can watch it a second time. Right, and that was pinched from an Indian language newspaper, actually. The vehicle doing the overtaking there is actually a state-run bus, and you'll probably be fairly amazed to discover that the person prosecuted for that near miss was not the bus driver for overtaking in a particularly risky manner. They obviously seem to be nearly forcing a truck off the road a moment earlier, but the actual motorcyclists got the tug, as it were, because apparently it's mandatory to make an arm signal before turning right. Now, it brings me on to the topic for today, which is the importance of making lifesavers. Now, the mirrors are a fine line of defense. If we use our mirrors, they show what's behind us, but there are blind spots. Not even the best mirrors can show everything around us, and even rear view cameras won't be doing that either. So sometimes it is actually necessary to make a genuine over-the-shoulder check. Unfortunately for a lot of riders, the last time they actually make this lifesaver before commencing a right turn is probably the moment they turn back into the test centre in front of the examiner. Now, the reason for making these over-the-shoulder observations is explained really early on in CBT. It's actually done before anybody goes riding on a bike. It's that fundamental to riding. It's to understand that we have blind spots either side of us. Our peripheral vision goes back here somewhere just beyond 180 degrees. We have slightly more than 180 degree vision here, but the mirrors show us what's behind us. They don't have a particularly big field of view. So there is a blind spot over a shoulder. And all we have to do is turn chin to shoulder. That's the classic rear observation. And that check visually clears that area and makes sure there's nothing hiding in it. Now, CBT instructors, DAS instructors go to big efforts right up to the moment of a test to try to make it clear to riders that they need to make these checks, usually over the right shoulder, but sometimes over the left shoulder. If we're turning left, there can be something hiding in our blind spot on the left. So why is it that riders start dropping these rear observation techniques, not checking the mirrors properly, not looking over the shoulders into the blind spots? Well, I can be utterly honest here and say that I've encountered riders saying, forget all that stuff they taught you on the test, it's only for passing the test. And I've actually heard this really depressingly from people teaching advanced riding skills. Now, I mentioned in other articles that a trainee is often introduced to something called mirror history. The idea is that if we're looking at our mirrors often enough, we know exactly what's in the area behind us, and we maintain situational awareness without ever needing the over-the-shoulder checks. So the big question is, of course, can we rely on mirror history? Well, ask yourself, what does a mirror check actually achieve? Well, all it delivers is a snapshot of the situation as it exists at the moment you look in the mirror. So effectively, it's like taking a photograph. And the problem is that we don't know what happens between the before and after photographs. So if we look once, we get a snapshot of what's happening behind us. A few seconds go by, we look again, we have no idea what has happened. So mirrors are useful, but they don't show us the whole picture. They show us a sequence of snapshots. They are not giving us a movie. And the longer the gap between our checks, the less we actually know about what has happened in between those two mirror checks. Basically, any decisions that we make on the basis of two mirror checks, which have a finite time between them, is, to put it basically, it's an informed guess. So how good is our informed guess? Well, as you can see, first of all, if it depends on the frequency of our checks. If we leave a long gap in checking, then pretty much anything can have happened behind us and we simply won't know about it. The second problem is a genuine mental issue. We can easily forget what we saw. Now, this is something I've talked about recently, some fairly recent research which has gone into the Science of Being Seen presentation, incidentally, is that there is a limit to the number of visual items that our brain can juggle before we start actually losing things from our memory. And the thing is that we won't know that we've forgotten something. It'll just disappear and we'll never even recall that we actually knew about it. So the trouble is, if we see something in the mirror and then there's a lot more things going on in front of us, we can easily forget that we saw something in the mirror. And then we can check again, see nothing there, and assume that it must be clear. And the problem is, of course, that in that interval, something can have moved. Now, the third factor is that even regular mirror checks can fail to show a rapidly changing situation that puts us at risk. Now, let me give you an example of this. Some years ago, I was on the motorway and I was following a rider. I was actually in my people carrier at the time, so not on my bike. And the rider was in front of me. We were catching some slower vehicles up. There was still a long way ahead, and the rider was making regular mirror checks off to his right. So in the middle lane, he's checking what's coming up on his right shoulder. Meanwhile, I happened to notice a car coming down the on-ramp that we'd just passed at considerable speed. I happened to notice it was a Mercedes. And what I also noticed was that it went straight into the inside lane, through the inside lane, into the middle lane, through the middle lane, and basically straight into the outside lane behind me. Now, what the rider didn't see was any of that. He was looking exclusively in his right mirror. So what he saw was a procession of vehicles coming towards him with a gap in them. And he timed his observation to double check the gap, and then he started to move out into it. Unfortunately, the gap had just been filled by that Mercedes, which had been accelerating right close behind me where it was invisible to him, and it was in the gap where he was about to move. So the driver hit the horn, predictably. The bike swerved back out the way, and who's to blame? Well, it's easy to point the blame at the Mercedes driver for actually not considering that somebody else might be about to use the gap that he was aiming for, but the biker absolutely needed to confirm his mirror history here. His mirror history had showed him an empty gap approaching him, but between his mirror checks, that Mercedes actually got into the gap that he was about to use. The simple way to have seen it would have been to have checked his mirror and then double checked with his head. So chin to shoulder, and that is what we mean by a lifesaver. It's the final check before we put ourselves into a potentially dangerous situation. Some people think that a lifesaver is a much bigger look right back over the shoulder. It's not. You don't have to do that. It's chin, shoulder. That fills in the gap nicely between what you see in peripheral vision in front of you and the mirror view behind you. But it's vital to confirm when moving laterally in this way that somebody else hasn't got there first. Okay, objections. Of course, the minute I wrote about this online, somebody promptly said, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing shoulder checks at speed because it's dangerous. Why? Ask yourself, what does that actually mean? What is the danger of looking over your shoulder at speed? Oh, well, there might be a car ahead that brakes suddenly. Well, if it does, what does that tell you about your following distance? Doesn't it suggest that you're too close? If you can't take your eyes off the vehicle in front because you're worried about it hitting the brakes, how about dropping back a little bit and doing your checks from further behind it? That would be my solution. Because frankly, if you are worried about taking your eyes off the vehicle in front to do a shoulder check, it's unlikely, I would suggest, that you are going to do effective mirror checks either. So there is a simple solution. Drop back, give yourself more space. The same applies with overtaking. People say you shouldn't do a shoulder check when you're overtaking because you're close to the back of the car in front just before you move out to overtake it. Well, let me put it this way. If you can see an overtaking opportunity, I, on my own motorcycle behind you, might also see an overtaking opportunity. And I might have waited for you to make several goes at it, which you haven't taken, and I might have got bored with it waiting, and I might have committed myself to overtaking you and the car you're behind. Your mirror check may not show me having moved out. I may be already in the blind spot alongside you. So double check, look with your eyes, not with the mirrors. The whole point of mirrors and shoulder checks is that they work together to give you full information on the side to which you're moving. And the same applies on a one-way system if you're moving left. Check the mirror, but then follow it up with a blind spot check to the left. It's quite remarkable how easy it is for vehicles to get into a blind spot, even when you think you've been checking your mirrors so regularly that nothing can go wrong. So whilst there are gross errors, like the guy on the scooter who simply failed to spot a bus coming up behind him and just made the right turn without any planning ahead, there are also situations where people get too confident in their use of mirrors. Do use shoulder checks. I do all the time. I've never lost the plot on using those. Right, that is pretty much it for today. Kevin says, going back to the theft, they've only got targeting if they have intelligence to act on. Yes, okay. And he says there can be issues for destabilization at speed. Yeah, maybe at 150 miles an hour, but frankly, I've never had a problem looking over my shoulder at 50 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour, or even a little bit faster than that. Modern helmets are much more aerodynamic than some of the older ones that used to rattle around on my head like a pod around a pea. I would honestly say that that really is not an issue on a modern motorcycle. The bike's stable enough to deal with you looking over your shoulder. The big issue, to be honest, if you really want to know what the problem is, if there is a destabilization of the bike when people look over their shoulder, it's because that they turn their shoulders at the same time as they look, and then they take the steering with them because their arms are stiff. As we get older, it gets more difficult to flex our neck, which is one reason I do a lot of simple neck twisting exercises. It does really help to keep our necks free. Right, okay, that is it for today. Last thing to say, don't forget the presentation tonight, of course. If you haven't signed up, please do come along, or tell your friends and riding buddies that it's on. It is available for 72 hours after the live event on catch up, so even if you miss it live, you get a second chance. And the other thing I was going to say was next 2 shows, all a little bit up in the air at the moment as to whether they will be live recorded or even possibly I might miss one, because I am going to take some holiday. I think it's about time, and I deserve one. Right, so thank you very much again for looking in. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This has been my 11ses show, and I very much hope you've enjoyed it. If you are out there riding the bike today, do make sure that you stay shiny side up and enjoy your ride.